Many people say, don't obsess over the results. You have to enjoy the process. To be completely honest, whenever I heard this in the past, I'll just brush it off, thinking, that sounds nice, in theory. It's not necessarily wrong, but when anxiety hits me hard, it feels like empty comfort. It offers absolutely no strengths. No one could logically explain to me how I supposed to enjoy the process when the results I desperately needed were nowhere in sight. Then, while reading a book recently, I came across some fascinating properties of algorithms. A thought suddenly crossed my mind. Wait, couldn't I apply this directly to life? So, I'm not an expert, but as someone who loves connecting the dots between different things I study, I wanted to create this video to share this solid, grounded comfort I found. The intriguing point I discovered comes from the philosopher Daniel Dennett's description of algorithms. He states that an algorithm has three key features: substrate neutrality, underlying mindlessness, and guaranteed results. The terms might sound a bit dry and academic, but when I apply them to life in my own way, they offered incredibly profound comfort. First, here is how I understood substrate neutrality. No matter what the material is, as long as the procedural logic is correct, the result will follow. We often fall into the trap of believing that materials like our innate background, talent, or connections dictate the success or failure of our lives. But from an algorithmic perspective, these conditions are just neutral input values. What matters is the procedure you run those materials through. Whenever I catch myself thinking, I don't have enough to succeed, this concept reminds me the only thing that matters is the system I am running right now. The second is underlying mindlessness. This means that each step of an algorithm is so simple, it requires no semantic interpretation. When I read this, it clicked perfectly. In life, we tend to attach so much heavy meaning to every minor success or failure, tormenting ourselves in the process. But in the world of algorithms, failure is just a simple, mindless calculation required to move to the next step. It gave me a huge sense of relief. This pain I'm experiencing right now is just one of countless minor steps toward the final output. I don't need to overthink it. Finally, guaranteed results means exactly what it sounds like. If the procedure is executed without error, the final step will inevitably produce the result. Of course, we are not God, so we can't possess a flawless algorithm from day one. That's why we should put in the effort to constantly tweak and debug our messes as we live. This doesn't mean if your goal is success, you'll succeed even if you do nothing. It provides a logical certainty. If you figure out the right method and run the system without stopping, your success is as good as physically guaranteed. Another concept that gave me a fresh perspective is a statistical process called Markov chain Monte Carlo, better known as the MCMC algorithm. This is a method used to map out an area by taking random samples when the exact answer is unknown. The most crucial part of this algorithm is the initial burn-in period. The algorithm starts from a completely random value, just like how we humans all start our lives from different random starting lines. Because of this, the algorithm spends its early stages wandering in areas completely unrelated to the target. The data collected here is entirely discarded from the result. Yes, thrown away without hesitation. But without this wandering phase, the algorithm can never reach the correct answer. I found immense comfort here. I wondered a lot in my 20s, constantly worrying, am I just wasting my time doing useless things? But according to this algorithm, that wandering didn't ruin my life. It was the mandatory burning period I had to go through to find my own correct answer. Lastly, the concept of ergodicity in physics was also fascinating. Simply put, it's the principle that if you try for a long enough time, the average will eventually find its rightful place. This concept instantly reminds me of the old Korean idiom 사필귀정, meaning all things inevitably return to their right path. I used to think this was just a moral belief, but looking at it through the lens of physics, it sounds exactly like the statistical convergence of ergodicity. Even if you seem unlucky right now and feels like you're falling behind, if you don't give up and stretch out your time horizon, your life will eventually converge on the value of success you designed. Therefore, what matters is not speed, but grit. The persistence to stay in the game without folding your hand. Thinking about all this remind me of a famous lecture given to university students by a highly respected Korean comedian. He compared life to a roller coaster. A roller coaster climbs high, but it inevitably has sections where it plummetes at terrifying speed. However, he noted a roller coaster has a safety bar, and if that safety bar is not secured, the ride does not start in the first place. So, he urged them not to be too terrified during the drop, but to enjoy the ride. Translated into the language of the physics and algorithms I studied, I believe that the safety bar is the very system and algorithm we have designed for ourselves. As long as we are on the right track, the downward slopes of life are not a crash. They are simply an essential route for the next climb or to reach our destination. So, what do you think? Comparing life to algorithms and physics might sound a bit dry, but I found a profound sense of security in it. Rather than the exhausting torture of vague optimism saying everything will be fine, the cold scientific logic that if you don't stop, the result is inevitable can sometimes provide much greater strength. If you have set your final output as success, I hope you don't torture yourself over the intermediate results unfolding during the process. Your result is already booked within your algorithm. Since the destination is already set, why don't you try enjoying the process together? Thanks for listening.